Oh, you thought we were finished with styling? No. I'm sorry, we've still got some more stuff to do. We're going to look at some advanced techniques. Now we're going to look at things like animations and something called pseudo classes. Now that sounds scary, but really it just means things like befores and afters and things like hovers, like a rollover. So let's get stuck into it. So what we're going to look at now is a few advanced techniques. We're going to look at offset margins, some animations, some pseudo classes, and then we'll finish it off with a nice simple rollover. Now, unlike the other lessons, some of these things really want to be displayed on the front end. So I have a copy of the website open, just displaying the front end. And so we'll jump between these two as I do some of these techniques. All right, let's get started with offset margins. Now this is a technique that I really like. It's where you put a negative margin on something like a div so that it overflows or overlaps into the section before it or after it. So let's set this up now. To make this easy to see, what I want to do is get this cards here and we'll change the background a little bit on this section so it's a little bit darker. And we can see the difference between the two. Now if I go to these divs with the card class on it, I can go into advanced, go to sizing and spacing, and change this margin here to a negative margin of say 150 pixels. If I click save, what you'll see here is it looks like these divs are being cut off. If we go to the front end here and we click refresh, you'll actually see them displaying in front of this section underneath it. Now these offset margins can work both ways. We can put this one back here to 0, and we can do the margin above here, let's say minus 100 pixels. We can add a little bit more space here, click save, and you can see this displaying here on the front end. And that looks pretty good. So now let's have a look at some animations. We're going to animate these cards here and we'll do it individually. There's a few techniques to show you. Rather than doing this on the class, I'm going to go down to the ID and do them one at a time. To add animation, you can go into advanced, go down to effects, and then we have animate on scroll. Click enable animation. The animation type, there's a whole lot to choose from here. I'm going to go with fade up. You can see the effect there. You can give it a duration. I'm going to leave it as the default. We've got some other things here too, like placement, easing, a trigger, and we've got something called a delay. I'm going to use the delay here on the next one. We'll go into this again. We'll make sure we've selected the ID. We're going to do the same technique. We'll go into effects, animate on scroll, enable animation. We'll go fade up again, but this time we'll add a delay of say 200 milliseconds. If I click save here, I go to the front end and refresh, and you should see the first card animate and then the second card animate slightly after it. Just like that. Now, of course, you could do all four and have them going up one after another, but that's how we do that effect. Now let's move on to something called pseudo classes. If we click the header, for example, you can see we have the ID here, and next to the word ID, we have something called the state. If we click this, you can see we've got our original state, and if we've got a hover state, a before, and after, and we can create our own custom states if we want to. Now let's look at before and after. So what before and after is essentially creating some content that we can style before and after the element that we have selected. We could do something, for example, like go into advanced, and we can give this a background color of say white. And we can go into size and spacing and make this say 200 pixels wide. We'll align this to the center by going auto and auto. We'll give it a height of say 10 pixels, and we need to set its layout style to block. And there you go. Now we can see that showing up before the header, and we can do one for after as well. So we'll go to after, and we can go, I'll do it in reverse because I'm already in the layout section. So I'll go block, I'll come out of the block, I'll give this some sizing spacing of say 10 pixels high. I'll make the width 200 pixels. I'll center it by going to auto, and then I'll go to background, and this time I'll give it a different color, say this dark blue. Now you see that's pretty tight to the text. We can do a few things here. We could go into size and spacing and give it a margin, for example. So we could go 10 pixels above it, and with the before we would do 10 pixels after it. So that is your before and after states. Now I'm going to show you the hover state. If you click something like this div, and we'll do this with a class of cards, we can go into the hover state, and now we can change some of the things with that hover. We might make this something that's nice and subtle. So I'll go to this blue and I'll make a custom color here just so we can see the effect. Now if we go out of the hover state and back to the original, you can see that it's gone back to the white, and we only see this as we roll over each of these divs. So essentially it made a rollover. Now let's take that one step further. If we go to the button and then we go up to the ID, we can choose the state again and go to the hover. Now rather than just changing the colors here, I'm going to change a couple of other things. We'll start with the button color. We'll make this something like white. I might change this text color to gray. Now also I'm going to go in here and change some of the padding on this to change the size. So maybe let's give this 50 pixels and 50 pixels. Again, we'll come out of the hover for a second, and you can see when we roll over this, we get that changing size. Let's click save and look at this on the front end. I'll refresh this and we'll see some of those changes we've made. There's the animations, there's our rollover, and there's our rollover. If we want to make this smooth and actually have some transition there, I'll show you how to do that now. We could go into Advanced, and if we go into Effects, there's something called Transitions. Click Transitions. We'll give this a duration of say 0.3 seconds. And what this will do is we'll animate between the two states in 1/3 of a second. You can see that there. That looks pretty good. We'll click save. And I'm also going to want to do this to these cards here. We'll do the same thing, but we'll make sure we'll have the cards selected. We'll go into Advanced, we'll go to Effects, we'll go into Transitions, and we'll make this one 0.3 and click Save. Alright, let's look at this before we finish up on the front end and see how it all looks. Refresh this, and we can see that we've got the nice smooth animation, and we have the same thing happening on our button. Well done, you've done it. I'm not going to be doing anything on styling for a little while. We've got a couple more lessons in this module until we start actually working on the website together. And then we'll start doing some of the styling and everything that we've learned natively as we just work throughout that website. So, you know what to do, click complete, and I'll see you in the next lesson.